Welcome back to Danielle O'Terry's Italy. Before we get started, I just wanted to let you know, if you don't already know, that if you're planning a trip to Italy, I offer 1-hour consultations at danielleoterryitaly.com. If you want an expert to look at what you've got or help you figure out where to start, that's a perfect place. The link is in the show notes. Among my favorite trips to plan are multi-generational family trips, especially if they involve a roots-finding day for those with Italian ancestry. But really, no matter what, the reason I enjoy planning these so much is because I have so much value to offer, because I'm thinking of things you're not thinking of, and there are a million things you don't know that you don't know. Because planning one of these multi-generational trips is genuinely difficult. First of all, everyone is excited, and that's a good thing. But also, everyone has a different film running in their head. The boomers think Dolce Vita, the cafe, the piazza, the slow lunch. And then the middle generation, either Gen X or millennial, they kind of have before sunrise running in their head, and they dream of wandering and doing things spontaneously. And then the grandkids are just all about TikTok. They know all the viral restaurants. They want to go see the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Everyone thinks that their version of Italy is the best one, the most authentic one. And that gap between the fantasy that everyone has and then the logistics that nobody wants to discuss is what this episode is about. Now, the first thing I want to name is something that nobody says out loud, and that's that the weight of a multi-generational trip lands in the middle. Now, maybe the grandparents offer to pay a significant portion of the trip, and that makes it feel like a gift, and it is, but it also can create invisible obligation. The Gen X or millennial in the middle is responsible for making sure the investment pays off and that grandma's comfortable. The kids are engaged. The teenager has Wi-Fi. The 8-year-old who needs to sit down every 20 minutes because they don't like to walk. That's like a very, very common complaint I hear from my multi-generational clients. They always have one kid who really does not want to walk. And then somewhere in there is that person holding it all together, and they have needs and also would maybe like to have something that resembles a vacation, but it's less realistic the more planning you leave on your own shoulders. Now, this is not a complaint about multi-generational travel. It's just an honest description of the dynamics so that the middle generation can go into this trip with their eyes open, but more importantly, build a trip that accounts for what's actually going to happen, not just what everyone imagines will happen or hopes will happen. So before you book anything, start with this. Have the bucket list conversation, but do it properly, not just what do you want to see, which produces either a list of everything or more commonly a big, I don't know, or like, oh, you plan it, sweetheart, whatever you want to see, which is not really how things are going to roll. So limit the options by raising the stakes. Say to everyone on the trip, if you get to choose only one thing, one single thing that you do on this trip, the Colosseum, the Vatican, a cooking class, what is it? What is your one non-negotiable? And give people time to actually think about that. Give them a few days. Let them sit with it. What comes back will likely surprise you. Maybe the grandparent who you assumed was religious and wanted to see the Vatican might actually say, no, they want to see the Forum because they remember that their father talked about Rome and Roman history his whole life, and this is something that they've become curious about too. And the teenager who you assumed wanted Instagram content might actually now be obsessed with gladiators. So you don't know until you ask the right question. The purpose of this exercise is not to eliminate destinations, it's to identify the 2 or 3 experiences that each person would be devastated to miss, and then to protect those ruthlessly while letting other things become negotiable. My next piece of advice is keep it simple. 2 locations if you're doing 10 days instead of my normal recommendation of 3 locations in 10 days. Seriously. 2 locations instead of 3 for a 10-day trip is more than enough when you're traveling with a lot of people. Now, I understand that you want to maximize the experience. You've spent all this money to fly across the ocean, but I'm thinking about how many times you need to get to and from the train station, all the bathroom trips the grandparents and the little ones are going to need while you're trying to figure out what train track you're on, and then getting taxis on the other side that usually only fit 4 people. And you're going to put this person in that taxi, but then this person, but then where's my luggage? And oh, by the way, you don't speak Italian. Your time is better spent people watching in a piazza, trust me. And if you're choosing between Florence, Venice, and Rome, eliminate Venice. The narrow streets and inability to get a quick taxi when you need one can make this trip heavier than necessary. I always say this: Venice is a great romantic trip. Go with your loved one, your spouse, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, whatever, or go by yourself. That's actually a fantastic way to see Venice. The third issue is the TikTok problem. I actually call it the Pisa problem. All Gen Zers will say they want to go to Pisa, and it is purely because of TikTok. And here's the honest truth: Pisa is an entire day trip that is not going to deliver much beyond that stupid photo of pretending to hold up the Leaning Tower, okay? You're not eliminating TikTok moments from this trip altogether. You're not a monster. You love your kids, but you are being strategic about which ones are worth a full freaking day and which ones can be woven into something that you're already doing. The Leaning Tower is a destination. A beautiful doorway or wine window in Florence is a TikTok moment that can happen on the way to something else. And, I got to say, the TikTok world, though I'm not an enormous fan, can be really fun if you let the kids lead the way. I learned this when I was traveling in Naples, with one of my Italian cousins, Ludovica. She had just basically come into the city for the weekend because she's studying classics. And my cousin Raffaella, her mother said, hey, take her to the archaeological museum. She needs to learn more about these things. And we spent the weekend wandering around. We had so much fun. And she just had this completely different view of the city that I did not know anything about because of TikTok. And she led me to so many different places for pastries and gelato that totally were not on my radar. So give your Gen Zer a task to find something that they think is really good that they found on TikTok, not just for the photo, but maybe something they think that everybody is going to enjoy, and let them navigate for one afternoon. 2 things will happen. First, they'll find something surprising. And 2, they'll feel like participants rather than passengers, which is the thing that makes teenagers tolerable on group trips. And now here is my most controversial piece of advice for multi-generational travelers. Do not rent a villa. I know, this seems counterintuitive. You're annoyed with me already. I can feel it. The villa is perfect. It's cost effective. It seems like everyone's going to have space, and the setting is beautiful, and you'll have long lunches on a terrace. There's a swimming pool. You're imagining yourself drinking a glass of wine by the pool, napping in a hammock, gazing at the rolling hills of Tuscany. You're not thinking about who's actually going to prepare lunch and clean it up, and who's going to buy the wine that you're sipping by the pool, and who's going to drive to get there, and how many rental cars you're actually going to need to go buy the wine, and who's never going to be able to have a glass of wine out on this trip because they have to drive, and that the roads in Tuscany are really dark at night. So the long dinner that you just enjoyed is now ruined because you're making sure you don't hit a wild boar on the side of the road going back to the villa. The morning coffee. Who's going to make it? Who's going to buy it? You need to go to a grocery store. The breakfast stuff. Who's picking up the wet towels on the floor? Who thinks the AC isn't strong enough and wants to call the villa owner? But oh, wait. Oh, honey, you call. You have the number. And you took Spanish in high school, right? Yeah, Spanish is the same as Italian. Do you know why hotels cost what they cost? Because they head off a million problems that never even enter your orbit with extra towels and English-speaking staff. This is why I recommend you do not rent a villa. And especially for those in the middle. You're going to be doing the driving, the grocery shopping, the morning coffee, the meal planning, the activity coordination, on top of everything, the whole mental load that you are already carrying. The villa removes all the infrastructure that actually gives the middle generation, the planners, a moment to breathe. The alternative is a large apartment in a city if you really, really don't want to stay in a hotel or it's outside of your budget. Florence in particular, even the immediate outskirts of Florence where you can walk into the city center or take a very quick taxi ride, This is what buys the middle generation the ability to walk out the door, find a piazza, sit in a cafe, have a glass of wine, and exist alone as a person on Earth for 45 minutes. This is not a luxury. This is the thing that makes the difference between coming home restored and coming home more depleted than when you left. No matter how loving and well intentioned everyone in the group is, the middle generation will need that exit. So build it into the trip's structure before you go. Now, the Tuscan villa is the number one fantasy of Italy. There are also lots of villas offered in Sorrento, but these are on the Sorrentine Peninsula. They're not like right in the center of Sorrento. And so you will fall in the same situation there. There are taxis more readily available, but they are crazy expensive. And calling those taxis and coordinating how many you need can really, really add up quickly. So whatever you've saved on the villa versus the hotel, you are going to be spending on cars and taxis. All right, so let's move into trip planning itself, the on the ground structure of each day. Now, the tough part about traveling with an older generation is that people are not always honest about their limits, and that includes being honest with themselves. Or they might not know them because you get confronted with limitations sometimes on a trip because maybe you walk around a suburban neighborhood every day, but it's very different from traversing cobblestone streets in super humid Rome. So, this is why I recommend booking one thing, just one, that everyone does together per day, and then leaving time either the morning or the afternoon for people to do things on their own. And a private tour solves a lot of problems. First, you'll have a guide to just take charge and lead the way. And that's also a local person to whom you can ask questions. Skip the line tickets will be purchased for you and already handled. And then everyone will have a shared experience that they will inevitably process in a different way, and talking about it later becomes an experience unto itself. Then leave the second part of the day open. So, those who want to go to more museums or take in more history can do that. Others can shop. Someone can park themselves in a piazza and gelato the afternoon away. For dinner, I recommend reservations no matter what in the most popular destinations, whether you're one person or 20 people, because there's a lot of very mediocre, if not downright bad food in the most touristy cities. But of course, for a big group, you'll need to plan ahead. And you can make reservations directly on the restaurant's websites very often now, or through a website called thefork.it. But one meal together per day, a lunch or a dinner, and then leave people to do their own thing. You don't need to meticulously plan out everybody's meal together. But if you do, this is where I say call in a professional, someone like me. If you want everything planned, drivers, restaurant reservations, guided tours across multiple cities, I strongly urge you to book through a professional, because the value that you'll receive for your dollars, especially as it's amortized across all the people and all the problems in the group that will then become easily mitigated, it's tremendous. We just had a family return from a multi-generational trip to Sicily. They had a route stay, they had a stay in the city and in the countryside. They had guided tours daily, they had van rides between different cities, restaurant reservations for lunch and dinner every single day. And for a pro, this is easy. We bust out an Excel spreadsheet. We let the guides know the dynamics of the group, who's got what issues, what they need, what they want. And these are people on the ground doing this every single day. So all of the problems get solved. But for the DIY traveler, like plan to take a week off of work just to do the planning alone. And you're not necessarily, you don't know what challenges to anticipate. I'll give you an example from that trip that we just finished planning. There was a day in Modica, Sicily, which is very vertical. It requires a ton of climbing. And then at the last minute, the guide let us know that there's actually now a tourist tram. So the older members of the family, if they wanted to, instead of having to stay behind and skip the day, could choose to do that on their own. So if you're DIYing it, keep your plan simple, one tour a day, one restaurant reservation per day, or leave it to the professionals. I believe the multi-generational Italy trip is one of the most meaningful things a family can do. It is also very complicated in ways that nobody who hasn't done it will warn you about. So going in with clear eyes about the dynamics, the logistics, and the invisible labor, it doesn't diminish the experience. It protects it. The families who have a terrible time are almost always the ones who planned the fantasy and ignored the logistics. They're the ones that said, we're going to go to the places that look the best and we're not going to worry about transportation until we get there. We're going to be spontaneous and we're just going to find a reservation at the last minute or let the hotel concierge figure it out for us, even though we're 17 people. The ones who have a transformative time are the ones who planned for both. If you want spontaneous downtime and you're traveling with a lot of people, you're going to need to actually plan for that. So if you're in the middle of planning a multi-generational Italy trip and you want someone to pressure test it before you go, that's exactly what a 1-hour consultation is for. I've seen what works and what doesn't. Now, if you're a committed DIYer, I also offer customized itinerary design where I go much deeper than just advice and actually plan the day by day. But you make the bookings on your own credit card. And then if you want to just turn it all over to me and my business partner, Ariana, make an appointment for a free bespoke trip planning consultation. And there I'll be able to give you a price estimate once I know more about your ideal trip, when you're going, how many people are going, and exactly what you want to do. If you have taken a fabulous multi-generational family trip, I would love to hear about it. This podcast is hosted on Substack at danielleoteri.com. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, you can just visit danielleoteri.com and you can leave a comment. They are open to everyone. Thank you so much for listening.